Right, I'm going to press mute all and start the next part of the story. Okay, so I've got it ready. Okay, let's have a go. Close that. Here we are, gone back where it was. So, chapter 4, The Terrible Shovels. Down in the hole, Mrs. Fox was tenderly licking the stump of Mr. Fox's tail to stop the bleeding. It was the finest tail for miles around, she said between licks. It hurts, said Mr. Fox. I know it does, sweetheart, but it will soon get better. And it will soon grow again, Dad, said one of the small foxes. It will never grow again, said Mr. Fox. I shall be tailless for the rest of my life. He looked very glum. There was no food for the foxes that night, and soon the children dozed off. Then Mrs. Fox dozed off, but Mr. Fox couldn't sleep because of the pain in the stump of his tail. Well, he thought, I suppose I'm lucky to be alive at all. And now they've found our hole, we're going to have to move out as soon as possible. We will never get any peace if we... What was that? He turned his head sharply and listened. The noise he heard now was the most frightening noise a fox can ever hear. The scraping of shovels digging into the soil. Wake up, he shouted. They're digging us out. Mrs. Fox was wide awake in 1 second. She sat up, quivering all over. Are you sure that's it? She whispered. I'm positive, listen. They'll kill my children, cried Mrs. Fox. Never, said Mr. Fox. But darling, they will, sobbed Mrs. Fox. You know they will. Scrunch, 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 went the shovels above their heads. Small stones and bits of earth began falling from the roof of the tunnel. How will they kill us, Mummy? Asked one of the small foxes. His round black eyes were huge with fright. Will there be dogs? He said. Mrs. Fox began to cry. She gathered her 4 children close to her and held them tight. Suddenly, there was an especially loud crunch above their heads, and the sharp end of a shovel came right through the ceiling. The sight of this awful thing seemed to have an electric effect upon Mr. Fox. He jumped up and shouted, I've got it! Come on! There's not a moment to lose! Why didn't I think of it before? Think of what, Dad? A fox can dig quicker than a man, shouted Mr. Fox, beginning to dig. Nobody in the world can dig as quick as a fox. And look, we can see the shovel coming in through the roof of their house there in the picture. And all the small foxes and Mrs. Fox and Mr. Fox. The soil began to fly out furiously behind Mr. Fox as he started to dig for dear life with his front feet. Mrs. Fox ran forward to help him. So did the 4 children. Go downwards, ordered Mr. Fox. We've got to go deep as we possibly can. The tunnel began to grow longer and longer. It sloped steeply downward. Deeper and deeper below the surface of the ground it went. The mother and the father and all 4 of the children were digging together. Their front legs were moving so fast you couldn't see them. And gradually the scrunching and scraping of the shovels became fainter and fainter. After an hour, Mr. Fox stopped digging. Hold it, he said. They all stopped. They turned and looked back up the long tunnel they had just dug. All was quiet. Whew, said Mr. Fox. I think we've done it. They'll never get as deep as this. Well done, everyone. They all sat down, panting for breath. And Mrs. Fox said to her children, I should like you to know that if it wasn't for your father, we should all be dead by now. Your father is a fantastic fox. Mr. Fox looked at his wife and she smiled. He loved her more than ever when she said things like that. Should we go for another chapter? Chapter 5, The Terrible Tractors. Ooh. Just checking. There's no one else I want to win. As the sun rose the next morning, Boggis and Bunce and Bean were still digging. They had dug a hole so deep you could have put a house into it. But they had not yet come to the end of the fox's tunnel. They were all very tired and cross. "Damn and blast," said Boggis. "Whose rotten idea was this?" "Bean's idea," said Bunce. Boggis and Bunce both stared at Bean. Bean took another swig of cider, then put the flask back into his pocket without offering it to the others. "Listen," he said angrily, "I want that fox. I'm going to get that fox. I'm not giving in till I've strung him up over my front porch, dead as a dumpling." "We can't get him by digging, that's for sure," said the fat Boggis. "I've had enough of digging." Bunce, the little pot-bellied dwarf, looked up at Bean and said, "Have you got any more stupid ideas then?" "What?" said Bean. "I can't hear you." Bean never took a bath. He never even washed. As a result, his ear holes were clogged with all kinds of muck and wax and bits of chewing gum and dead flies and stuff like that. This made him deaf. "Speak louder," he said to Bunce, and Bunce shouted back, "Got any more stupid ideas?" Bean rubbed the back of his neck with a dirty finger. He had a boil coming there and it itched. "What we need on this job," he said, "is machines. Mechanical shovels. We'll have him out in 5 minutes with mechanical shovels." This was a pretty good idea, and the other two had to admit it. "All right then," Bean said, taking charge. "Boggis, you stay here and see the fox doesn't escape. Bunce and I will go and fetch our machinery. If he tries to get out, shoot him quick." The long, thin Bean walked away. The tiny Bunce trotted after him. The fat Boggis stayed where he was with his gun pointing at the foxhole. Can you see here? Can you see Bean with his ears all gunked up with all that muck? Trying to listen. Soon, 2 enormous caterpillar tractors with mechanical shovels on their front ends came clanking into the wood. Bean was driving one, Bunce the other. The machines were both black. They were murderous, brutal-looking monsters. "Here we go then," shouted Bean. "Death to the fox," shouted Bunce. The machines went to work, biting huge mouthfuls of soil out of the hill. The big tree under which Mr. Fox had dug his hole in the first place was toppled like a matchstick. On all sides, rocks were sent flying and trees were falling. The noise was deafening. Can you see there the tree being toppled over? Down in the tunnel, the foxes crouched, listening to the terrible clanging and banging overhead. "What's happening, Dad?" cried the small foxes. "What are they doing?" "It's an earthquake," cried Mrs. Fox. "Look," said one of the small foxes, "our tunnel's got shorter. I can see daylight." They all looked round, and yes, the mouth of the tunnel was only a few feet away from them now, and in the circle of daylight beyond they could see 2 huge black tractors almost on top of them. "Tractors!" shouted Mr. Fox, "and mechanical shovels! Dig for your lives! Dig, dig, dig!" Oh, should we do one more? Who wants one more? Thumbs up? Thumbs down if you don't? Let me see. Who can I see? Who's doing a thumbs up? One up, one down from the letters. One up from Florence. Can't see Molly. Olivia, thumbs up. Aben, thumbs up. Yeah. Oh, thumbs up in the classroom. Great. We'll go for one more chapter then. Sorry, I think it was Elsie. Was it Elsie? No, was it Amelia? I think Amelia's just thinking she could probably do some fantastic reading herself. Chapter 6, The Race. Now there began a desperate race. The machines against the foxes. In the beginning, the hill looked like this. And this is the picture in the beginning. After about an hour, as the machines bit away more and more soil from the hilltop, it looked like this. Oh, they've got quite a lot of it, haven't they? Sometimes the foxes would gain a little and the clanking noises would grow fainter, and Mr. Fox would say, "We're going to make it, I'm sure we are." But then, a few moments later, the machines would come back at them, and the crunch of the mighty shovels would get louder and louder. Once the foxes actually saw the sharp metal edge of one of the shovels as it scraped up the earth just behind them. "Keep going, my darlings," panted Mr. Fox. "Don't give up." "Keep going," the fat boggis shouted to Bunce and Bean. "We'll get him any moment now." "Have you caught sight of him yet?" Bean called back. "Not yet," shouted Boggis, "but I think you're close." "I'll pick him up with my bucket," shouted Bunce. "I'll chop him to pieces." But by lunchtime, the machines were still at it, and so were the poor foxes. The hill now looked like this. It's all gone. The farmers didn't stop for lunch. They were too keen to finish the job. "Hey there, Mr. Fox," yelled Bunce, leaning out his tractor. "We're coming to get you now." "You've had your last chicken," shouted Boggis. "You'll never come prowling round my farm again." A sort of madness had taken hold of the three men. The tall, skinny Bean and the dwarfish, pot-bellied Bunce were driving their machines like maniacs, racing the motors and making the shovels dig at a terrific speed. The fat Boggis was hopping about like a dervish and shouting, "Faster, faster!" By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, this is what happened to the hill. It's more like a valley now. The hole the machines had dug was like the crater of a volcano. It was such an extraordinary sight that crowds of people came rushing out from the surrounding villages to have a look. They stood on the edge of the crater and stared down at Boggis and Bunce and Bean. "Hey there, Boggis, what's going on?" "We're after a fox." "You must be mad." The people jeered and laughed, but this only made the three farmers more furious and more obstinate and more determined than ever not to give up until they had caught the fox. Or we'll stop there. 3 chapters is quite a lot. Hold on. Stop share. Here we are. I'll unmute. Hello, what did you think?
Did you like that?
Keep going. Will they keep? Do you think they'll catch Mr. Fox? No. Olivia says no. Oh, Lauren's not sure. Alex says no. Amelia, no. What in the classroom? Oh, is that Caleb saying no? They're not going to catch him. Seb, no. No. Bit of a mixed bag there. Austin and Aben, not sure. Meredith, no. Charlie and Benjamin, no. They're not going to catch him. Janelle, no. No, it's going to be quite hard though, isn't it? Because they're gaining ground. They're quite close. We'll have to find out. Which will be... Oh, it's Friday. Is it Friday tomorrow? I've lost track of all the... Friday tomorrow, everyone? Yeah. So Friday tomorrow, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll have a few more chapters. And then I'm here again on Thursday after that, where hopefully we'll be nearing the end of the story then. I hope everyone is going to spend some time in the sun this afternoon. Yes? Yeah. Anyone got a paddling pool? Anyone? No, I haven't got a paddling pool to go in.
Yes. I'm in the park riding my bike this afternoon.
You're going to ride your bike, someone? Oh, nice. I might do a bike ride as well, actually. That's a good idea. I might make some chocolate brownies.
Chocolate brownies, oh yummy.
Yes. But if I do, I'll show you them tomorrow. But I will see everyone tomorrow. Fantastic afternoon for the sun.
Yes. Webster, we make cookies.
Did you, Harry?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to your house.
We got a small one and a big one, but because we didn't fill it the big one that deep, Aubrey can walk in there and I can.
Oh, wow. Anyone else done baking?
We did baking.
Yeah, a few of you have done baking. This is chocolate brownies I've
baking. I have been baking.
Yeah.
We're going to have a paddling pool.
You're going to have a paddling pool, Charlie?
You wake me up.
Yeah, let's have another paddling pool.
Oh.
I've seen pictures of people in paddling pools and I'm just...
We've been digging up the front garden.
Garden?
Yeah, Aaron, you do it to me. No.
Come here. Not talking to you.
I'll let you all get back to your exciting afternoons and of catching balls, skating, biking, having lots of fun by the sounds of things, and maybe some learning. But it's hard. No, it's hard term. Enjoy your fun activities. And who's coming back for the next chapters tomorrow?
Me.
Yeah, great stuff. I'll see you all then. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.